Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined here by the North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and the arts and features beat editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Well, let's dive right in. Thad, what is on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
This week we have a cover story looking at the latest batch of Humboldt County civil grand jury reports.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people aren't super familiar with the grand jury, at least not as familiar as they should be. I think most people think grand jury and they think criminal indictments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the civil grand jury in California is really an institution. It's been in place for 150 years or so. And its job is oversight of local government. And so the way it works is it's supposed to be 19 volunteers come together. They're not paid for their time. They're just doing it out of the kindness of their heart and their zest for oversight. And they can investigate any local institutions. And they have kind of great freedom to do that. And the one mandate is that they have to tour all custodial facilities, so the jail and juvenile hall, every year, and then write a report on kind of the conditions inside. But everything else, they kind of have free reign, and so they field lots of complaints from people that want them to investigate certain things. They read the news over the course of the year. They think that there's some things that maybe need to be explored that haven't been, and then they split into committees, and they dive in and launch these really time-consuming, labor-intensive investigations. And at the end of their 1 year of service, they release these reports. And in order to release them, they need 12 of the 19 jurors to vote in favor of approving this report. So I don't know if you've ever done like a group writing project with people.
Oh, man.
But getting like 3 people to agree on the final form of something is challenging, much less 12. But then they release these reports, and government agencies involved have to respond to them kind of in a formal response. And it's this wonderful system of oversight that's all volunteer run.
And I'm like a political and governmental junkie, and I didn't know this institution, how it operates, or for that matter, when and why. What are some of the things they looked into this year?
Yeah, so this year they released, I want to say, 8 reports, and they kind of run a wonderful gamut for civic dweebs like ourselves. Everything from like the lack of a good feedback and complaint system for county governments and county agencies to the very controversial and well-publicized David Josiah Lawson homicide investigation. Right. And so they looked at a bunch of different things, and the kind of the depth of the reports varies a little bit, but they're all pretty fascinating reading, I have to say.
Although they didn't all come out, right? Not all of them were published.
Right. And so, yeah, Jim Glover, who is the foreperson this year, we got to catch up with him. And he said he couldn't. That's the other thing, is that all of grand jury proceedings are like shrouded in secrecy until the report is released. And so they admonish all the witnesses that they call in that they're not allowed to talk about the experience of going and talking to the grand jury. They're not allowed to talk about what the grand jury is investigating. And then the grand jury jurors themselves are forbidden from talking kind of out of school about what the grand jury is doing, or if a report never comes out, like what they investigated and didn't report. But Jim kind of gave us this like tantalizing tidbit that they got a bunch of feedback from county council and the judge that is supposed to oversee their work. And they just really look at it from a liability standpoint, the judge and county council. They're not really looking to protect the county from embarrassment or liability, but just making sure the grand jury itself doesn't get sued by somebody who's the subject of a report. And Jim said they came back with that feedback, and they couldn't get a vote on one of the reports. They couldn't get 12 jurors to agree on putting it out. And so it just kind of died on the vine.
So of course that's the only one I'm like desperate to read.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, sorry, you shared a link. So just in case people are interested, you shared a link to the Humboldt.gov.org website, so people could check out all of those public reports. But is there, not to interrupt your train of thought, but was there one of those reports that, for example, there's Public Guardian Office and Patients' Right Advocate? Is there, some element of that you think that we could sort of encapsulate in a short little overview?
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the reports that we focused on in this week's cover story. But the that kind of has two pieces, the patient's rights advocate and the public guardian's office. And the really short version is that they found that the public guardian's office is just chronically understaffed at this point. They haven't added a deputy public guardian for 20 years. And so the public guardian's office is tasked with handling the affairs of somebody who can't handle them for themselves, who's deemed by a court to be unable. And so that could be due to mental illness, it could be due to physical, mental disabilities, a whole kind of variety of factors. But essentially, when the court conserves somebody, they put somebody into a conservatorship, it means that the public guardian's office takes over their affairs. And that can be something as limited as just kind of depositing their social security check and paying some bills, to really overseeing like every aspect of their life and buying, personal items and making sure they're housed appropriately and all of that. And the number of people being conserved in Humboldt has steadily increased over the past couple decades for a wide variety of really complex reasons. But the public guardian's office, like I said, has not had a staffing increase in that time period. And then they apparently had a staff member who went out on long-term medical leave. And so all of a sudden they went from 3 deputy public guardians handling all these cases to 2. And the result is that the caseloads are just way out of whack and they can't keep up. And so this complaint came to the grand jury because skilled nursing facilities have people under conservatorships living in their facilities, and it's the public guardian who is basically the equivalent of the family member who they talk to about care plans and stuff like that. And the public guardians just weren't showing up for meetings and stuff like that. And so they complained to the grand jury and they investigated and found, their caseloads are 3+ times that of other counties. That's really a crisis. Yeah. And then the flip side of that. Sorry,
I was just going to say that it's great to hear that there's such a role within the governance of our county, that someone actually performs that role. This is really to protect people, just to have somebody on their side when there's no family or friends to help them manage their affairs. You said that we're at about 3 times what the average is in the state. I don't know if you mentioned it. How many cases are we talking about?
So I believe the report said that the average the deputy public guardian had 110 plus cases that they were responsible for. And so that's 110 individuals who they're responsible for, like I said, everything from just handling financial affairs to fully, providing for every need.
I think one of the examples was making sure somebody had a pair of pajamas.
Right.
Yeah. So it could be, running errands. It could be handling their taxes. It's a million things. And this massive number of people, it's untenable.
Right. And not that I'm conserving, comparing the conserved to children, but if anybody has a family and has children that you need to look after and care for their needs, imagine having 110 of them.
Oh, no.
Right.
So I interrupted you. Were you going to transition to patient's rights advocate?
Very briefly on the patient's rights advocate, which was in the same report, but it's really a much different function. So similar to the public guardian's office, there is one patient's right advocate for all mental health patients in Humboldt County. So anybody who interfaces with county mental health has a singular advocate. And the report really focused in on a very kind of minute thing in county policy, changing county policy that has just kind of reverberating impacts for this advocate's ability to do their job. And that is previously, whenever somebody was, Sempervirens, the local mental hospital, short-term mental hospital in Humboldt County, they used to send out a census daily, which was a list of everybody that's in the facility, why they're there, how long they're there, what type of hold they're there on. And then the advocate would look at that list and then decide, who he or she needed to contact to discuss care plans and whether they wanted to lobby to be released and things like that. And the county stopped doing that, saying it violated patients' rights. And so that made it so the advocate had to physically go to the facility every day and talk to each patient to get their kind of backstory and try to get a permission of release of information from them in order to advocate on their behalves. And so it just made this advocate's job much more cumbersome, and they already had just kind of a caseload that was unmanageable to begin with, and this kind of has pushed it over the edge, apparently.
Well, that seems like an overwhelming task. I'm glad there is an entity, organization like the grand jury to kind of help put the community back on track to kind of rein in the overwhelming, role that they fill in our community. So thank you, Thad.
And always good to have a watchdog.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to look forward to checking that out in more detail too. How about you, Jennifer? What are you working on this week?
Well, the only thing that's better than having a watchdog, having chickens. If you are the last person in Humboldt County who has not yet gotten chickens, there's help. Katie McGurty, who contributes to our gardening column, Down and Dirty, has a little walkthrough primer on how she got into the chicken racket. She got a bunch of chicks. They're laying eggs. They're making her soil nitrate rich. And they apparently provide tons and tons of entertainment. She also points out, how you can use sort of recycled materials. You don't have to go out and buy a chicken coop. Although if you want to go full glamping chickens, that's certainly your right. And P.S., you cannot have a rooster in city limits in Eureka. So if you hear that cockadoodle doing, like, don't be a narc, but know that it's illegal. But yeah, she goes into kind of the ways and means of chickening. She called the headline is Becoming a Flockster. So if you are ready to flock up, she will help you through that. Also, we have a great piece from Ashley Harrell about a farmer's market stand that has opened up in Blue Lake. Folks from Blue Lake would, go to different farmer's market stands around the county, but that's a trip during shelter in place. And, some of those are big and crowded. So Little Blue Lake now has a farmer's market stand that is run by a fella named Trevor Guthrie, who used to be a lighting guy, doing events, doing theater, doing stuff like that. And then COVID hit, and you can imagine the demand for lighting for large events has shrunken. But rather than kind of, sit home and do nothing and worry about the future, he decided, you know what, I'm going to go and see about this little inkling that I've had for a long time to get into the produce business. And so he did. And It's kind of amazing. It's this thriving little stand in Blue Lake. And not only will he sell you the vegetables he's got, he will hustle and be like your vegetable dealer and find you the zucchini, the scallions, the enoki mushrooms, whatever it is you're looking for. He knows a guy who knows a guy.
This is all pretty cool. I mean, considering under the circumstances, people aren't really sure exactly how to get into this. And now we know we've got, if we want chickens or if we want to get down with our farm produce, there's people we can talk to.
You have Powers Creek Produce, and you have Katie McGurty as your kind of your role models in the chicken and produce business.
This is actually pretty cool. So just as an aside, one of my friends, their neighbor has chickens, no rooster, so they're not in violation, and they fly over the fence sometimes. And so they've called back, hey, white meat, hey, dark meat, come back. So some people name their chickens in very creative ways.
Yeah, circle of life.
Absolutely. I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought about chickens. I have colleagues here at work who have them, many of them. I don't know if you guys know people who do it, but it's apparently a thing.
I have managed to get a hold of the eggs without having the chickens.
And so can you tell us, for people who don't know, how amazing fresh eggs are?
They're ridiculous. They're wonderful orange yolked sunshine in a frying pan delights, and you will never go back to the regular store-bought eggs. I apologize for the trauma that all other eggs will be for you forever.
It's truth.
That's a ringing endorsement. So yeah, I second that. I think they're pretty amazing. All right, guys. Well, we are getting near the end of it. Thad, do you have any last things you want to mention at all? Like any other articles that we can look out for when we pick up our copy?
Sure. I'll quick plug for two other pieces in this week's journal. We have a story about COVID's impact on the Humboldt Transit Authority and local bus systems, which has been pretty profound, both from kind of a safety and just a long-term sustainability standpoint. And then we have a story about Eureka's budget deficit and the council's recent decision to put a 1.25% sales tax on the November ballot, which is quite a hefty tax.
And just out of curiosity, we have one already. Is this a continuation or an increase?
We have a 0.5-cent sales tax, so a 0.5% sales tax, and this would replace that.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll cover that in our election coverage in the upcoming weeks.
Sure, read a lot about it.
Yeah, thanks. There's so much. There's packed in there. Thank you guys both. That'll just about do it for this week. North Coast Journal is on newsstands now and available online. Pick one up. stay informed, stay safe. Todd and Jennifer, thank you so much. See you guys next week.
Thanks, Dave.
Wear a mask.